Good morning, YouTube. Today we are talking about Stranger Things. As you know, Season 2 has recently been released. It's estimated that over 15 million people viewed it within the first 3 days alone. Now, if you watched Season 1, you understand why it has gained such a favorable rating from both fans and critics alike. It has gathered such a large cult following for its novelty and references to 80s pop culture. Now, the question that everyone was wondering going into Season 2 is if the hype would live up now that we have had at least a week to view and process through the whole season. The results are consistently positive and similar to the ratings and success of the first season. The answer is actually a lot simpler than you think. And I want to talk about how Season 2 is actually just a recreation of Season 1. It takes a lot of its writing technique and recreates it, giving us something that we think is brand new, but actually the same writing style that we have seen before. Now, before I go any farther, this is your last chance. I'm telling you right now, spoilers are ahead. So if you have not watched the show, stop what you're doing. Go binge through all 2 seasons. It's not that many episodes. Come back and watch this video. As you have hopefully noticed by now, part of what makes Stranger Things so nostalgic to us is its constant reference to 80s movies and other movies similar of its genre. Season 1 did a great job of this, referencing so many movies of its genre. Season 2 does the exact same thing. We have Bob's reference to his former character of Mikey in The Goonies.
Yeah? What's at the X? Pirate treasure?
We have almost an entire recreation of the plot of Gremlins through Dustin. And even in Eleven's standalone episode, it's almost a direct copy of Luke's storyline in Star Wars Episode 5.
Dig deeper. Your whole life you've been lied to.
There are literally dozens of specific shots that are meant to recreate these popular 80s scenes. This season is full of inspiration from the decade that it places itself in. There have already been several videos kind of covering these little Easter eggs and references from 80s movies, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing that. The point I do want to make by this video is the biggest reference that Season 2 comes from, and that is the first season. The unique writing of Stranger Things brings 4 separate plot lines in both seasons, and all 4 of them tell a very different genre, giving us the same story. They were actually told by network stations that this idea would not work, and they wanted them to cut down to just one storyline. When the Duffer Brothers finally signed to Netflix, they were allowed to write each storyline how they wanted it to be seen. It also allows them to explore different genres through each storyline. So real quick, I'm just going to recap Season 1 for you. Now, the 4 storylines that take place is you have the emotional connection, you have the conspiracy unraveled, you have the monster movie, and finally you have the mystery solved. So plot 1, the emotional connection. The first plot comes in Season 1 from the perspective of Joyce looking for her missing son. This is what gives the show heart, allowing us to feel this emotional connection to a mother looking for her son. Plot 2, conspiracy unraveled. The second plot comes from Hopper as he searches for Will, and in his pursuit, he begins to unravel this government conspiracy. Plot 3, the monster movie. The third plot in Season 1 is the story of the teenagers, as Nancy and Jonathan, and eventually Steve, begin to hunt down and eventually defeat a monster. Plot 4, mystery solved. The final plot comes through the kids' perspective as they solve the mystery to what happened to their friend. The end of Season 1 eventually brings all these characters together as the plot lines intersect and wrap up the individual storyline, connecting the dots and solving the bigger mystery together. This was in fact a very successful formula that the Duffer Brothers knew they had to recreate in order to make Season 2 just as successful. And now this is where it begins to get tricky. It would have been just way too much for them to recreate every single character doing the same storyline over and over again. So what they did instead was actually quite genius. They recreated every single storyline, but mixed and matched the characters so that it felt new to us. They took a little bit of characters from this plotline, a little bit of characters from this plotline, saw what happened if they became friends and if they started talking, and we didn't even realize that we were living through the same exact 4 plotlines that Season 1 has given us. And now this again was very successful because it worked. We fell for it. And it's not a bad thing that we fell for it, it's actually a very great thing that we fell for it because we were able to relive this a second time. Not only does Season 2 recreate the plot lines, but it builds on it and expands through them. So let me explain how exactly this works. So once again, we have plot 1, the emotional connection. Starting with the first season plot line with the emotional connection, it is seen originally through Joyce as she is missing her son, but in the second season, it is played through Eleven. They are both searching for some form of missing family, whether it's a a missing son or a mother that she never knew. The weird part about it is that both of them seem to kind of pick up their storyline after getting into an argument with Hopper. I'm not sure if that's just a coincidence or if that's very intentional, but Hopper somehow leads them both on this path when they're even closer to finding their missing loved one.
I go, and I never leave! Nothing ever happens!
Yeah, nothing happens and you stay safe!
And it's also very ironic just to see how both storylines also deal with this absent father figure. But in general, we see that both seasons deal with this emotional connection through the idea of reconnecting the family. So then we have plot 2, the conspiracy unraveled. The plot line of the conspiracy in season 1 now moves away from Hopper uncovering the Hawkins laboratory into season 2 to Nancy and Jonathan exposing the Hawkins laboratory. The premise for this is almost very similar, and the Hawkins laboratory is the one key component that finds itself in both seasons. Season 1 we see Hopper sneak into the laboratory, and season 2 we find Nancy and Jonathan going into the laboratory. The progression is still there. The conspiracy that began to unravel in season 1 through Hopper is now continuing to do so through Nancy and Jonathan, and while we are reliving the same storyline, we don't really care as the audience. We're just excited to see this conspiracy progress. Plot 3, the monster movie. The monster storyline that began in season 1 also progresses into season 2. In season 1 we are introduced to a single monster, but in season 2 we are introduced to a whole different species of these creatures. Both seasons, the monster movie specifically starts off from a love triangle. In season 1 we're introduced to Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan. And in season 2 we're introduced to Dustin, Lucas, and Max. Episode 3 in both seasons is the key to this storyline, because in episode 3, season 1, Nancy finds that monster in the woods near Steve's house. In episode 3, season 2, Dustin now finds the monster in his trash can outside of his house. So now you have these two love triangles, one in each season, defeating this monster, and once again, big surprise, both seasons, Steve comes to the rescue with his really awesome looking bat and saves the day. And I mean, you just have to admire the fact that the losers of both love stories eventually just become best friends. I mean, we just need a spin-off series of them alone. So finally, plot 4, mystery solved. So the final plot that progresses from season 1 into 2 is the mystery of the Upside Down as a whole. In season 1, this plotline was lived through the kids as they discovered Eleven and eventually more secrets about the Upside Down. In season 2, this plot is lived through the story of Joyce and Will, as Will is possessed, and by this whole situation, they begin to uncover more clues to this mystery. Now, plot 4 is arguably one of the most important ones to us as the viewers, because it is through this mystery unsolved that we are explained and given answers. In season 1, we were very new to the show of Stranger Things, so we needed to dumb it down like a child and have a teacher explain it to us. But in season 2, we are more ready for this whole world of the Upside Down, so now we're ready for a doctor to explain it to us. Both these characters of a teacher and doctor give us the answers as the audience that we need as they are explaining it to these characters. And just like season 1, season 2 eventually gives all the plot lines a crossover, and they join up with the mystery solved crew, and they avoid the bad men and try to run away from them. So with all 4 storylines basically following the same structure that we saw in the previous season, it makes sense why this show feels so familiar to us. Not only from all the 80s movie references, but from the reference of itself. And I mean, that's not even to mention the small little details that we see being reproduced, such as the death of Barb and Bob. I mean, Barb, Bob, could you be any more similar here? Even Nancy's storyline is just way too similar. In both seasons, episode 2 brings her to a party, and in episode 4 is when she eventually hints that she's getting together with Jonathan. I mean, just Nancy, just please, in season 3, do not lead on Steve anymore. And I think my favorite part is that both seasons are opened through a game that foreshadows the rest of the season. Think about it. In season 1, we have Dungeons and Dragons that gives hints to what's going to happen in the season. And in season 2, they're playing the video game of Dig Dug, which is exactly what happens in the tunnels in season 2. I mean, you just have to wonder, what are they going to do through season 3 since we are so onto them by now? With all these similarities, it's just so much more than a coincidence that these seasons complement each other so well. Suddenly rebranding the same formula to such a massive cult following fan base was clearly the right move by all the writers. So the only question is, what is season 3 going to bring us? Are we going to get a spin-off of all of Eleven's brothers and sisters that were apparently other experiments and get this like New Mutants type show going on? Are we going to learn more about the Upside Down and if they really did close the gate? Or are they just going to once again reproduce the same formula? So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of Stranger Things 1 and Stranger Things 2. I look forward to seeing many more seasons of this show, and I am just hoping that season 3 just gives us justice for Bob. Oh.